that will set the stage for the next 4 years.
Yeah, for Armageddon.
You know, and we're talking about Armageddon. We're talking about on the class on Revelation. We're talking about the seven spirits with the seven vials, pouring them out among mankind, which are really seven labors performed by the disciples that are treading the path of Christ. And this leads up to what everybody calls Armageddon, which everybody thinks this is going to be the last great war where you're going to have millions of soldiers fighting each other in the valley of Armageddon. And but according to the way we're looking at it here, it's going to turn out quite a bit different than that. The, the Battle of Armageddon is really fought on more of that, will be fought, hopefully. It could be reduced to the physical level, but it's mostly on the astral level where the two different forces are coming together in a great battle. And we see this throughout the world, where the world is divided in the left and right. And they can't get along with each other, and they're battling it out to see who can dominate. Okay, the next verse in question is this. It talks about we've been talking about the beast and the dragon and the false prophet, the Trinity, and these are influencing all mankind to bring this great event together. And then we're told that out of their mouths came frogs and evil spirits and so on. And then we have this verse, for they are spirits of devils working miracles which go forth to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them together to the battle of the great day of God Almighty. And that great battle is, of course, identified in the next verses, Armageddon. Now, it says, the spirits of devils go forth to the kings and of the whole earth. Devil, as it's used in the Bible, comes from the Greek, and it's daemon, and it didn't refer to a devil the way the Christian world today talks about devils. It referred to an otherworldly spirit, and often it was seen as a benevolent spirit. So, say this word, as it's used, would be similar to, say, a New Ager channeling somebody and having some extra sensory spirit speaking through them. That would be daemon. That would be what they called the devil.
Like
And
Seth, like Seth.
yeah, Seth would be one of these, or any of these channelers that are like Ra is another, and so on. So when it talks about devils, it's talking about those that are authoritative entities that are communicating through humanity that people are depending on, but they're putting them in place. They're putting their words in high authority because it's supernatural. And if you go to any of these channeling meetings that I've been to a couple of them, and people are just so enamored by the channeler that they accept whatever is said without even checking with the inner voice. And so it's like an idol to them because it's supernatural. They think everything they're saying is true 100%. and that's not necessarily true. It's usually a mixture of truth and error. So when it talks about devils, it's speaking of outer authorities that we put our trust in. Now, that's not necessarily a channeler. It could be just referring also to the various authorities of the world. These could be scientific authorities that they or educational authorities or political authorities. They speak, and the rank and file public believe what they say because they're an authority. He's a doctor, so what he says is true. The doctor says you take chemotherapy, you go do it because that's what he says. He's the authority, and and it says they work miracles. Now, the original Greek, the miracle is not an exact translation. It's more like signs. Okay, so we have these spirits of the spirit of these powerful authorities giving us signs that they are correct. And it says these signs and authorities go to the kings of the earth to gather them to battle. Now, this has happened on various scales throughout history. And let's look at Hitler, for instance. When Hitler come forth, he had all kinds of authorities behind him, declaring that he was to be relied on. Many authorities says we can work with Hitler. He's not going to be a problem. And he's got a lot of good ideas. One of them in particular, they were studying eugenics here in the United States. It was a pretty big deal. And eugenics is where you do selective breeding of humanity to create a master race. And Hitler glommed onto that idea. And he got some of his ideas from scientists here in the United States. And he glommed onto it very strong. And he thought creating master race was a really good thing. And he moved forward with this technology and doing this. And many of the authorities in the United States says, wow, this is a sign we're on the right track. The Nazis are really pushing ahead with this, and we got to catch up to them. We got to learn from them. So this is just one area where he received the Nazi Germany received a lot of praise and support. Then Hitler appeared on Time magazine as the Man of the Year. And there was lots of signs that, Hitler did everything right. One really big sign was that we entered a Great Depression after 1929, but Germany did also, and they were in a greater depression than we were. And so we had two main leaders trying to work us out of the depression, FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, and Hitler. Roosevelt never really did get us out of the depression. But Hitler got Germany out of a worse depression than we had in about a year. When he came to power, he just turned things around. And that was a sign to the world that he was on the right track. And so a lot of people were really enamored with what he had accomplished. He just turned the economy completely around, and to the extent he created a war machine that was unparalleled at the time in just a couple of years. And we were just struggling to survive economically, whereas they were prospering.
What did they do? What did he do to pull them out? Did he just increase labor and what did he do to stimulate the economy?
He created a interesting money system there, for one thing. He did a lot of innovative things with manipulating finances and money, and also got bankers to make loans and put everybody to work. and they had a pretty close to 100% employment there because of the.
That's what I would think.
They built a lot of tanks and airplanes and war machines.
Yeah, that's where they put their surplus in the preparing for war. And so if he had waited a while to start the war, he could have easily conquered the world. Thank God the war started as early as it did, so it gave us time to counter him. But he had all these signs, and a lot of people were asking the question, well, maybe dictatorship is better than a democracy because look at how slow we are in overcoming the depression, and look how fast Hitler overcome the depression for Germany. So maybe it's better if we have just one strong leader just dictating everything to us. So because the democracy, they are kind of sluggish and making up their mind, a lot of arguing and everything. Whereas if you have one strong leader, you can get things done a lot faster. So there's benefits to both sides. It is true. If they do have a strong leader, you can get things done faster. And the Book of Mormon makes an interesting comment on that. It says, if you could be rest assured, you could always have a good king. A king would be the ultimate leader, but we cannot be rest assured that you can always have a good king. Therefore, democracy, democratic form of government is the most safe. So
That's why we have three branches of government. That's another triad for you.
yeah. So anyway, these powers that be, we have these signs, and these signs gather together people for the great battle. And this happened with Nazi Germany. We had all these signs, and it gathered people together. And on two sides, there was one side that kind of saw the truth. Winston Churchill saw the truth about the dangers of Nazi Germany, and their ideology was anti-freedom in just about every respect. Yet they were prospering, and he wasn't impressed with the signs. He saw beyond the signs and tried to warn the people, but nobody would listen to him until finally when Hitler invaded Poland, then people saw the truth.
But didn't Chamberlain, didn't he say, well, that's okay, we'll just give Hitler Poland? I mean, Chamberlain really had the wool pulled over.
Chamberlain gave him Czechoslovakia.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, one of them.
Right. He gave him. He had a meeting with Hitler, and he says, "Okay, if you can be satisfied with Czechoslovakia and don't go any farther, we'll just give it to you, and not do anything to resist or help him out." And Hitler says, "Well, sound like a good deal to me. We'll go ahead and do that." So he just took Czechoslovakia without firing a bullet. And but he didn't keep his word. Then he invaded Poland a few weeks later. But when Chamberlain came back from the meeting with Hitler with that signed deal, they had ticker tape parades for him, and they declared big newspaper stories with headlines saying "Peace in our time achieved by Chamberlain," and he was a really big hero for just a few weeks until Hitler invaded Poland, and then he turned into the to the devil almost in everybody's minds. Now he went down in history. He didn't go down in history as a peace in our time guy at all. But it was the one that was despised. Winston Churchill is the one that went down in history as the good guy. But he was a hero. It wasn't seen that way. And so when things develop like this, you have the two sides in conflict, and those who actually see the truth that's somewhere not on the extreme of either side, but in the middle somewhere. Those who actually see the truth are few indeed, because there's so many signs that take you the wrong direction. Now, among the New Age people and also the religious people, they go a lot by science. Yet Jesus talked quite a bit about signs, and he says, "A wicked and adulterous generation seeketh a sign." Yeah. So why is that true? Why is it so wrong to live your life according to signs?
Well, you're looking outside of yourself for one thing.
Exactly. You're looking outside of yourself. So when you see a sign outside of yourself indicating you should go a certain direction, and you go by that without checking with your inner God, then that sign becomes an idol, because an idol represents a God that you follow that's outside of yourself. And if you follow that sign without verifying it from within, then you're worshiping an idol. Okay. And that's why Jesus says, "A wicked and adulterous generation seeketh a sign." In other words, a wicked and adulterous generation seeketh to be guided by outer gods rather than the inner God.
So that's adultery. That's worshiping almost as well, adultery in a sexual sense.
You're married to the true God within, so
Right.
you're violating your marriage to the true God when you have make your main relationship with the outer gods.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
You said it better.
Okay, let's see where we are here. So anyway, a lot of people are expecting the War of Armageddon to happen and Jesus to come in a big blaze of glory, but that may not be what will happen. For here is what he said: "Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and see his shame." Now, Paul also said something similar. He said this: "For you yourselves know perfectly well that the day of the Lord cometh as a thief in the night." So how can he come as a thief in the night if everybody's expecting him to come in the clouds and everybody's going to see him? How do we rectify those two thoughts?
Well, he's unknown.
Yeah.
They don't recognize him.
Well, the mass of people won't recognize him, and they probably won't. Its effect won't be felt for years after.
Right. When the true coming happens in three major steps. The first step of the coming of Christ happens with the recognition that there is such a thing within that people call the Christ consciousness, the birth of the Christ in the heart. That's the first stage of the coming of Christ for humanity. And that, when I was a kid, I never heard the term Christ consciousness much, but as I aged, I heard it more and more. And now it's a term that everybody is familiar with, even religious people that go by the Bible or have heard the term Christ consciousness. And not even all the religious people are negative on that. Some of them are pretty positive about, well, Christ consciousness, that's a good thing, And then kind of the second stage in it is the public being more aware of being able to sort out truth from error, because we're entering into the Aquarian age. In the Piscean age, people were governed very strongly by their emotions. Their emotions ruled over mind. And the Aquarian age is going to be reversed. mind will rule over emotions. And as we switch to the higher mind is in tune with the God within. And so when people begin to verify truth by what is spoken within themselves and verified within themselves, that brings the presence of the Christ consciousness closer. And then the third major thing will be the overshadowing of certain disciples on the earth by the Christ himself. And he will be working through a number of disciples throughout the planet. And then finally, he may make an actual physical appearance. Now, the esoteric teachings are not clear as to how that would happen, but it indicates that the second coming could just be through overshadowing, or it could be through him making an actual appearance. But what's interesting is in the book of Acts, when he ascended, there was a small group there that were gathered and they watched him as it said he ascended into the clouds, disappeared. Okay. And then an angel came and spoke to the disciples there, and he says that as you've seen him go into heaven, so shall he return. Okay, so in other words, this was given as a sign, for want of a better word, as to his telling us how he will return. How many people saw him leave? Just a dozen, maybe 2 dozen people, just a small number.
Well, there was only 120 that recognized who he was.
Right. And there was probably a lot less than that saw him ascend. There was just a small gathering saw him ascend. And it says that he will return in the same manner in which he left. So if he returns, that tells us that the ones that will recognize him when he first returns would be a very small number, because it was a very small number that saw him go. And it says the return will be like his leaving. So that's an interesting scripture. If we take that literally, it would mean that when he first returns, not every eye will see him, but every eye will see him when he eventually gets on TV or internet or whatever. Then every eye can see him.
Come down in it.
But if the book of Acts is correct, then the ones that initially see him and recognize him would be just a small handful of dedicated disciples. Okay, and speaking of these forces, the positive and negative forces on the planet, it says, and he gathers them together in a place in the Hebrew called Armageddon. One of the most famous verses in the whole Bible there. Now, Armageddon is an interesting word. The book of Revelations was written in the Greek, but Armageddon is a Hebrew word, and it's the only place this particular Hebrew is used in the whole Bible. And it's composed of two words, Har and Megiddo. And it means mountain of, it's Megiddo, and it means mountain of Megiddo. Now, what's interesting is this Megiddo was not a mountain, but it was a great plain in Israel where many ancient battles were fought in the Bible, were fought in this great valley. And so, but there's no mountain there. So why would it be called the mountain of Megiddo when it's just a great plain? This is one of the kind of a testament that the book of Revelations has a lot of symbology in it. And it's not to be taken literally in every instance, because there's no literal mountain. in the Valley of Armageddon.
That's your higher consciousness is that talks about the mountain, or it could be the gathering of righteous people is also called the mountain of the Lord.
Right. A mountain here is one of the meanings of a mountain is higher consciousness. There's two meanings of a mountain in the scriptures. One is higher consciousness, and another is a kingdom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gathering of the
So you
righteous.
have to look at the context to figure out what they're talking about. But here it would be higher consciousness. So they're how then are they gathered into higher consciousness? So when the disciples of the master do their job and dispel illusion, the leaders of the world will fight against it and will eventually yield and will themselves to be lifted up to a higher state of consciousness. So this is what happens when you have the interplay, the battle of the two forces, the left and the right, conservative, liberal. They get together and they battle, and the result is lifting humanity up to a higher state of consciousness.
Well, the battle that's going on now is between war and peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're in the midst of the battle of Armageddon, it is really, and there's been a number of Armageddons. One famous one, on hindsight, we can look at it objectively and see it more clearly. On the current one, it's really hard to see. We have a tremendous disagreement throughout all the nations of the world, and there's no agreement as to what is really the true path for people or nations or governments to take. It's just not settled. But things in the past have been settled. But if we lived in the past, it would have been difficult to see, like slavery. The North and the South in the United States were divided about slavery. Some people thought it was a necessary thing to have, and other people thought it was a terrible thing to have. Now, the ones that were against slavery, we can see on hindsight that they were on the correct path. But they had a tremendous battle, and we had a tremendous civil war. And then after the dust settled, people began to see that slavery was wrong. And eventually, right now, you can't find anybody that can defend slavery as it was practiced by the Old South. I don't know. Has anybody heard anyone talk about how we need to have slavery again?
Oh, we'll find a couple.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty rare. You might find a very small handful, but not very many. So
Well,
it's pretty much settled, and it raised us up as a nation to a higher state of consciousness. We still have slavery to worry about, but it's a different type of slavery. So slavery is lifted up to a new level, higher level than it was before. So now they're trying to enslave us by other means. But the physical slavery that we had in the old days is now seen as wrong, and we were raised up in our consciousness, and that's the mountain. That's the mountain that occurs in the battle of Armageddon.
one other thing, Joe, people in the South, not only was slavery bad, but the people in the South were becoming lazy. They relied on the slaves to do all their work for them. And to this day, if you listen to the speech of Southerns, they have that slow, lazy Southern drawl that indicates, that they were.
Yeah, it did make them lazy. Matter of fact, it's the same thing with the Hebrews in the time of Moses. The Pharaoh didn't want to let those guys go because that made life easy for him. That's like saying today, we got to let all of our internet go, and we don't want to depend on that anymore. That'd be hard pill for people to swallow, and that's kind of the way people felt about their slaves. if we don't have these slaves, our lifestyle is going to go way downhill. So
Even their speech became lazy.
they wanted to keep their slaves. Yeah, well, don't tell a person from the South there. You might get some bad feedback.
All
Yeah,
razor.
yeah.
Pay them.
Actually, they got a nice friendly accent now that it's they're pretty friendly people down there in present day. Okay, and the next verse reads this. And the seventh angel poured out his vial in the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple in heaven from the throne saying, "It is done." Now we've had seven angels, and the seventh angel pours out his vial in the air. And air is symbolic of what?
Mind. Yeah.
Mind. Okay. So the seventh angel is his job is to stimulate people's higher mind. We've talked about the higher emotions and lower in the past, and now we have the higher mind and the lower mind. And the purpose of this seventh labor is to stimulate the higher mind. And the higher mind is in contact with the Christ consciousness within. The lower mind, connected strongly to just the physical computer brain, is not. And it just goes and calculates in black and white. Whereas the higher mind can see the truth that's between the two extremes and extract it. And there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne. Okay, the temple in heaven is the Christ within, the inner voice, the higher self that's within yourself, that connection with God. And from that comes the voice of God saying, it is now true that people are beginning to be in contact with the higher mind and see what true reasoning is. Because this is the purpose of the disciple in the seventh labor, is to stimulate the higher mind in the consciousness of the people. Whereas in the past, they say they present black and white details and say this proves something is true. With a higher mind, you use a higher form of reasoning that touches the soul and goes beyond just black and white facts. Because you watch any of these debates on the internet or watch any two good debaters, they both will present a lot of facts and come to different conclusions. Just facts themselves cannot bring you to the right conclusion as to the true principle. But the higher mind will take you there. And when the disciple stimulates the higher mind in the masses, then the truth will finally start to be seen by the public. And this is where the lights surface and win the battle of Armageddon. And we're entering a great battle right now of the two different forces are at play upon the earth. They're battling together. And the interesting thing is neither the extreme left or the extreme right have all the answers. But in the left and the right, there are divisions, and they fight also among themselves. Whereas the true disciple with the higher mind can look at the left and extract the truth from that, and look at the right, extract the truth from that, and stimulate this vision and perception of truth through higher reasoning in the people that he's in contact with. And eventually, in this great battle of Armageddon that we're having, I don't know how long it's going to last. The Tibetan tells us it's going to at least take another 100 years from now to enter fully into the Aquarian age. So we're going to have this battle going on for some time before it's completely won, but we're in the middle of it now. And there are people that see the truth and in growing numbers. Okay, any comments or questions? And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, and there was not since men were upon the earth so mighty an earthquake and so great. So with this revelation, it says there were voices, and to bring people up to the higher mind that's in connection with the soul, there are great voices, and these represent great teachers that are upon the earth, and they're stimulating this higher thought. And there are thunders. This represents great awakenings from those that are being taught. And lightnings, and this represents revelations that different individuals throughout the world have that lead people to pure reasoning and higher mind. Until it says there was the greatest earthquake of all. Never has been such a great earthquake, and an earthquake symbolizes a change in belief system. So all this is working together that will change the belief systems of humanity as a whole, until we eventually have peace on earth, goodwill to men. And
that's the new belief system.
Yeah. Okay, my friends, we'll leave it off there. Any comments or questions